Hello, I'm Oliver Pickard and welcome to beautiful Limousin, France. Well, welcome to the lathe in the workshop. I've got so much going on at the minute that I've actually struggled to find a space where I can sit down and quietly film a video that's not a building site. I've been crazy busy, and there's going to be news on that very soon. But this video has been inspired by you, my wonderful viewers, because not a week goes by that I don't get at least one email or direct message on social media by someone that I've never met or talked to before, or one of my regular lovely social media people that talks to me all the time, or some world famous automotive journalist, which that's always very surreal when that happens. But it doesn't matter who it is, it's always the same email, right? It always contains three things. So it's a very short email, and it's a link to a car for sale. There's a tractor going past. It's always two questions. The first of those questions should I buy this car? The second question is the interesting one. The second question is, or is there some other less obvious thing that I'm not thinking of? Is there a hidden gem of a car that I haven't thought of, or that you know about that you think I should get, or what do you think? And then I always message them back a list of questions, asking things like, what are the things that you need from a car, and what are the things that you want from a car? Because the wants are always quite similar, the needs are always very different. So some people say, oh, I need a vehicle that I can transport, big furniture in, and as many people as possible quite often. Or I live in a city and I need something that I can street park that's very small. Or I live outside of a city and I commute into a city, and where I work doesn't have parking and I'm forced to park on the street, or something like that. The needs vary wildly, but the wants are usually very similar. They're either front wheel drive or rear wheel drive. They're either like sporty driver's car, occasional track days maybe. That's usually the wants, right? So I've compiled a list of 6 cars that everybody overlooks, hidden gems. But these hidden gems, I have criteria, as I always do in this kind of video. My criteria are, they need to be reasonably priced. They need to have reasonably priced spares and easy spares availability, which is not all. That's the thing that usually puts someone off when it comes to a lesser known vehicle or a hidden gem type vehicle. A car that people aren't always aware of. And the other thing is, these cars had to be available all over the world, which is very difficult because a lot of European market stuff or British market stuff wasn't available in America. But I've tried to make, as I do with all these videos, I've tried to make them as globally friendly as possible. So not every single car on this list may be available where you live, but hopefully most of them will be. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. So my first driver-focused car is a family-friendly hatchback that's also rear-wheel drive, that can be drifted, it can be rallied, and it can be tracked. And that is the wonderful Lotuslbert Zombie. So what is a Lotuslbert Zombie? Well, on the face of it, it looks like a Dodge Omni or a Talbot Horizon, but it's not. This is not your grandma's Talbot Horizon. Oh no. Because the Lotuslbert Zombie was created when Chrysler Europe wanted to go rallying in the 70s. They wanted to compete against such legendary cars as the Ford Escort Mark II. And they were desperate. And so they looked through their parts bin of what they had. And they took a car called the Hillman Avenger, which is alright, but it's nothing to write home about. But it was decent handling. And they shortened the floor pan and they shoved it in the body of a Talbot Horizon. And then they sent it off to Lotus. And Colin Chapman and his lads at Lotus in Norfolk looked at this Talbot Horizon and they had 2 things to say. 1, it weighs 960 kilos, which is very good news. And 2, it's ugly. So they painted it black and then they painted a big silver stripe down the side, and they put it on some fat, chunky mini-light alloys, and then they made it handle like an absolute bomb. And to power it, they put in the engine from the Lotus Esprit. This is a 2.172cc, 150 brake horsepower twin cam made of aluminium with a dogleg gearbox. Utterly incredible. In fact, those dogleg gearboxes are often stolen and fitted to Ford Escort Mark II rally cars because it's better than the gearbox Ford had on offer. Now, the standard road car will go from 0 to 60 in 7.5 seconds, but with some tweaking of the very simple mechanicals, these cars can be incredibly fast. But they're an absolute riot to drive, being short, rear-wheel drive, lightweight, incredibly chuckable. They're incredible fun, and I've actually looked at buying one myself several times. Although being in France, they aren't easy to find, but there are a few out there, although here they do want a premium for them. But like I said, this is not a Dodge Omni. This is not your Dodge Omni Shelby edition. This is nothing to do with that. These cars were dedicated rear-wheel drive rally weapons, and they made a lot of them. And in comparison to your Ford Escort Mark IIs or your Vauxhall Chevette HSRs, they're available for not a lot of money. And they are fantastic handling, and I actually like the way they look. I think they look wicked, and I love them. But they are one of the best cars out there at any price, and they are massively, massively underrated. The next car on our list is front-wheel drive, and it is a coupe, and it's also powered by one of the greatest four-cylinder engines ever produced, and that is the Honda Integra DC5. Or the Acura RSX Type S, if you're in America. Now, what is it, and why should you care about it? Well, it is a mid-sized, I'd say, coupe front-wheel drive. It's one of the most underrated cars of our modern era. The reason for that is, one, it's powered by the Honda K series, which is an utterly incredible engine, and two, it lives in the shadow of its younger brother, which is the DC2 Integra. Now, if you Google Honda Integra, you will find a whole swath of DC2 Integras. If you click on Google Images, it's just DC2 Integras, and the DC5 doesn't even come up. Even if you put, fourth gen Integra, nothing comes up unless you search DC5. That's the most important bit. And this is not a bad vehicle. This is not a lesser vehicle than its younger brother, the DC2. It's just as good. It weighs 1,200 kilos. It was available with either a 5 or a 6-speed. And in Europe, the Integra DC5 had 200 horsepower. The Japanese versions had 215, I think. Like, that's nothing to be like. It's an incredible vehicle, but somehow this car has fallen into a hole in Google and it can't get out. And they are very hard to search for. They are, unless you use the term DC5 or RSX Type S, you won't find them. You won't find them for sale in search engines, and you won't find them in Google. And because of that, they're an absolute bargain. And like I said, their younger brother is now fetching an absolute fortune in America. So this is a car that, if you're looking for a reasonably new, reasonably modern daily driver that you can also take on track days and stuff like that, or you can do spirited driving with, but will also take a full boot of shopping and put your kids in it and all that sort of stuff, I would look no further than the RSX. It is a beautiful car, in my opinion. It is a very, very good looking car. It's a very timeless design. It comes at a time when Honda were making some of the most timeless cars that you can buy And I don't mean most beautiful. I mean cars that don't age. If you look at the Accords, and you look at the DC5 Integra, even the first Honda Jazz, and you look at them today, and they don't look out of place on a modern road. They look like a new car, and they're still very handsome. And yeah, they're not to be sniffed at. These DC5s are incredible. Quite hard to find, like I say. You have to use the term DC5 or RSX Type S to actually find one. But everyone, including car people, seem to have overlooked them, which means you can get them for quite a bargain. The next car on this list is something completely different. I wanted to include a car in this list that is rear-engined. I wanted to include a Porsche competitor, if you will, but for a whole lot less money, which is no easy feat. However, I'm from the north of England, and there is a car from the north of England that is, up there at least, legendary, but seems to have been forgotten in the rest of the world, and that is the Daverin. Now, Daverin sounds like a rather camp hairdresser that works at Tony and Guy's, but don't be misled by the name. The Daverin is one of the most interesting and one of the coolest vehicles ever produced. Daverin produced a wide range of vehicles. They started production in 1985, they finished in 1983, and they were owned by various owners within that time. They were originally rear-engined with a Hillman Imp engine. Now, if you don't know what a Hillman Imp is, it was created by Chrysler Europe, who, for some reason known only to God, when looking for an engine designer, employed a guy who was an ex-Ferrari engine designer, and he designed an all-aluminium, super high-revving 1-litre masterpiece that just happened to have head gasket problems when it tootled around town, but that's all been sorted now. It was the limits of the technology of the time, but many are still available. And you can still get parts, of course. But Daverin looked at this gem of an engine. It's super lightweight, aluminium gearbox, aluminium engine block, alloy head. It revs to the moon. And they thought, well, why isn't it in a lightweight car? So they made a fiberglass monocoque, gorgeous coupe body and inserted that Hillman Imp engine into it. And they created a masterpiece. Daverin made some beautiful, beautiful cars. They also made some really ugly cars during that time. Well, during their, lifespan. Towards the end, Daverin were putting Brian Hart Formula 2 engines in their cars. Ford BDGs, I think they were. If you don't know who Brian Hart is one of the men who made Cosworth famous, and his engines were putting out like 400 brake horsepower. They were basically road legal Formula 2 cars, and Daverin's did well at hill climbs, track days, and sprint events, and all that kind of thing. But the place where the Daverin really excelled was on rally stages. And they earned quite a name for themselves, and they did very, very well. But that fame never seemed to leave the north of England. And because of that, today you can find a Daverin for an absolute steal, especially a project. If you want a project, you can. I found a beautiful Daverin project for like $5,000. It's incredible, and they don't rust because they're a fiberglass monocoque. There's no chassis to go bad, but they put numerous engines in there over the years. They even did a mid-engine mini-powered car like my Cox GTM that sits just out of frame. They put a ton of different engines in. They were stunning and they handled fantastically. They're a gem of a car, and people completely overlook them, and I have no idea why. Daverin deserves to be up there with names like Lotus and Caterham as some of the greatest track and rally focused cars in history. And it simply is overlooked, I think partly because of the daft name, but race engineers, racing car people know what they are, and they are loved by their community. So make sure, if you're in the market for something like that, if you're in the market for, say, a Lotus Elise or something like that, and you can't quite stretch to it, You could actually find a better car, possibly, in a Daverin. In my opinion, they're as cool as a 911, and they are a fraction of the price. And on a real road, on a country road, you'll be showing an air-cooled 911 your brake lights. They are that good, and they are, like I said, they're a fraction of the price. Next on this list is a different kind of car. I wanted to find something that was small, that was city carable, that was mini, that kind of is a mini. But I wanted something that also had a bit of prestige to it, a bit of clout. And my choice is the Midas. What the hell is a Midas, I hear you ask? Well, Midas was a company from the north of England, and they secured the rights to build a car called the Mini Marcos. And the Mini Marcos won its class at Le Mans. That's how good the Mini Marcos was. The Mini Marcos was another fiberglass monocoque, just like the Daverin, but unlike the Daverin, it used a mini front subframe and a mini racing engine, well, a lightened mini front subframe, and a racing mini engine up front, because of course the Mini won Bathurst and the Monte Carlo Rally and all the touring car events and did all the awesome things that it did. So Marcos looked at the mini engine and that mini front subframe and that drivetrain, and they thought, that's cool, we're going to use that in a tiny fiberglass, super lightweight mini coupe. And they took it to Le Mans and they won their class. Now, Midas later bought the rights to build the car. But they didn't just want to rest on their laurels. They wanted to improve on a Le Mans winning car. And if you're going to improve on a Le Mans winning car, you need an incredible engineer. And they found an incredible engineer by the name of Gordon Murray. And if you don't know who Gordon Murray is, he designed the McLaren F1. He also designed numerous Grand Prix winning Brabhams and McLarens. And he's just unveiled plans to build his new super badass 3 abreast seated central driving position supercar. Gordon Murray is one of the greatest engineers in automotive history. And here he is designing a little fiberglass mini thing. And that car was called the Midas Gold. It was available in numerous different specs, but the Midas Gold and the Midas Bronze were the Gordon Murray ones. And they were built from 1981 to 1985. They use rear trailing arms. They don't use a mini rear subframe. And they use a lightened mini front subframe with a full race built 1275 awesome engine. They weigh nothing and they look, I think, really cool. I think they're not kick-carry at all. They are just badass, and they deserve to be worth a lot more than they are worth. Which is why they're on this list. They are a wicked driving engine. But not just that. A couple of years ago, Quaife decided to build a 5-speed gearbox for the Mini. And I can't help thinking how cool a Midas Gold, a Gordon Murray designed legendary Le Mans winning based car would be with a 5-speed gearbox underneath it. You would have a car that does mega fuel economy, that can be parked in any town or city because it's a Mini, and yet can raise hell at track days and sprint events. And if you want an autocross car, my God, look no further. The Daverin would actually be an awesome autocross car as well. So that's why that's on this list. They are spectacular, and they can be found for not a lot of money because they are vastly underappreciated. They made quite a few, although they weren't made in any great volume ever, but I think the Midas deserved to do a lot better than it did. And I think one of the reasons why it's so overlooked is because it was made in the north of England, just like the Daverin, and of course the silly name. Silly names don't help. People like Donkervoort know that best. Anyway, Donkervoort, if you don't know, are a Dutch company that make a car that looks a lot like a Caterham. The next car on this list is something completely different yet again. I wanted I wanted a car that was a large saloon car, a barge, if you will. A car that could do long motorway journeys, stealthily and quietly, without raising the wrong sort of attention. And my choice for that, number 5 on this list, is the Toyota Aristo. Now, the Toyota Aristo is made from 1991 until 2005. There are Toyota Aristos after that, but the one that I would get, there are 2 generations in that time. There's the 90s one and the 2000s one. And they are variants of the Lexus GS. And the first generation was designed by Giugiaro. Yes, that Giugiaro. But what is a Toyota Aristo, and why am I saying that you should buy a Toyota on this channel? Well, the Aristo has the engine from the Toyota Supra, the 2JZ twin turbo engine with the 6-speed manual gearbox. And that is a car that you will now pay like 100 grand for crazily. But you can get an Aristo for like 10 grand. And they're brilliant quality, they have gorgeous interiors, and they go like an absolute stabbed rat. They are incredibly quick motorway cars. They are superb GT cars. They have a huge boot, air conditioning, heated seats, the whole thing. But they can be bought for Toyota Corolla money. And as far as an underrated car is concerned, if you need a business class, like long distance cruising vehicle in post-Corona wherever, look no further than a Toyota Aristo. You can get every single part. There are numerous aftermarket companies that will help you get more power from them if you so wish. A Toyota, in theory, you can build a Toyota Aristo with in an excess of 1,000 horsepower. Not that I suggest doing that, but it is a possible thing, and that's why it's on this list. It is cheap. It doesn't draw the wrong sort of attention. In fact, I dare say it is a sleeper. It's beautiful, but it doesn't have a Lexus badge on it. That's why I've chosen the Aristo and not the GS300. And it, like I said, Toyota badge. It looks like a cool Aventis. That's all it looks like. And yet, you can cruise on a motorway all day long at good speeds. It will get good fuel economy because it's a turbo. It has a massive boot. Look no further. It's massively underrated. People look at BMWs and people look at, Mercedeses, and of the time period, 1991 to 2005, your Mercedes will not be as reliable as a Toyota Aristo will be, and your BMW will have all sorts of wiring and electrical problems, whereas your Toyota will just be a Toyota, and it will do what Toyotas do, and it will be reliable, and it will be lovely. And so, like I say, if you want an executive barge, look no further than the Toyota Aristo, but not the ones after 2005, because you won't get a 2JZ, although I think you can get the V8. But that's not a performance engine, that's like a cruisy, whooshy, super smooth luxury car engine. So if that's what you want, go for that. The final car on this list is an estate car. I wanted a family estate. I wanted a large family car that can do large family car things and then raise hell when you want to. And for that, I have chosen the Volvo 700 series Turbo. Now, the 700 series encompasses the 740, the 760, and the 780, and they were built from 1982 until 1992. And they, looks-wise, they are very 1980s Ralph Lauren advert. They are very old money looking, they are very understated, they are very sleeperish. They aren't exactly a looker, but they are understated. And they do have a 2-litre twin-cam turbocharged engine, and they are rear-wheel drive, and they do have incredibly strong shells, internals, gearboxes and differentials. And they are the car of choice for many Northern European drift fanatics for very good reason. Forget your BMW 3 Series with their cracking subframes. This is a strong car that can be bought for a lot less than an old BMW or an S chassis Nissan. These are tough. They have high quality leather interiors with comfortable seats, maybe a car phone, maybe air conditioning, maybe tinted windows, maybe even a roof rack and a tow bar. And you can look like you are taking the kids to school while you go to a track day. And because it's an estate, you can fit 4 spare wheels, a toolbox, and it can even tow a caravan if you wanted it to. Like, there are very few reasons not to buy a 700 series Volvo. One of the reasons is that it was designed by Bertone, visually designed by Bertone, and the bodies were actually made in Italy. And because of that, rust is a thing. But as long as you buy a clean one, and there are many clean, one owner, like old lady driven Volvo 700s out there, it is that mythical car. You know, in the car movie, when they're like, oh, what if we only had a fast car? And then they walk into the back of this old lady's house and they pull the blanket off and they're like, we can make this work. It's like that. It's like that moment when Brian turns up in the Fast and the Furious and they pop the bonnet and they're like, 2 days, no shit. Right? It's like that. Except it's a Volvo estate and it's probably brown. But they're badass and they're strong and you can fit your entire family in it, or you can go to a track day, or you can take your entire family to a track day with a caravan or whatever, and you can go to the local hardware shop and fill it full of plywood or do whatever you need to do, and it will do it because it is a Volvo and it's safe and they're just superb. And if you are a young person who wants to do a bit of rallying or wants to do a bit of track days or a bit of drifting or a bit of anything like that, then, and you want something that's rear-wheel drive, that's safe, that's dependable, that you can get all the bits for, but yet can make big power, look no further than a BMW. Look no further than a Volvo 700 series. My personal choice would be trying to find a Volvo 780 with the full luxury trim. And they did a few 2.3 litre versions with 197 horsepower, but there are only a handful of them, and they're incredibly rare, and you probably won't find one. The more common one you'll find is the later 2 litre twin cam turbo that still makes very good power, and with a modern turbo, not necessarily a bigger turbo, but with a modern turbo and a few tweaks and some electronic wizardry, you can make legitimate S15 power in a car that looks like your grandmother's, and that's kind of a beautiful thing because it doesn't draw the wrong sort of attention. So yeah, that's my list of underrated cars that you can get for far less money than the driving experience that you will get. And that's the wonderful thing about them. It's kind of the opposite of air-cooled 911s. You know, air-cooled 911s, they're wonderful and also, don't get me wrong, and I really want to do a video with one. But the driving experience isn't necessarily worth the amount of money people are asking. And the reason for that is because people want clout. People want Instagram likes. People want the, hey, look what I've just bought kind of thing. And if you don't want that, you just want the driving experience and you're on a budget and you want something that's, you know, reliable and fast and fun to drive and that you can take on track days and drive responsibly on the road, and you want all of those things, but you're not bothered about the clout and you just want something that's fun, and although, let's face it, having a Gordon Murray designed Mini is cool. Don't expect anyone to know what your Daverin is though. But one day you may be in a car park and someone will walk up and they'll go, oh my god, a Daverin! And you'll be like, oh yeah. And everyone else will be like, what? Eh? It's going to happen, just like me with my GTM. But it is interesting, and in a world full of supercars that are anything but, it's the perfect thing, I think. You know, cheap, fun, superb. So with that, I'll ask you that if you have any ideas of kind of left of field, weird and wonderful, underrated, unloved drivers' cars that are far less than, worth far less than the driving experience that you'll get and the ownership experience that you'll get. I know I'm going to get a lot of people saying 2CV because they're right. Please leave those comments down in the comment section below. Please be awesome to each other, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have fun, drive safe, bye bye.